I want to talk about the old paradigm of limitation and moving into a space that is outside of logic, most especially outside of fear and worry, which logic can actually bring us into. It doesn't have the expansiveness of really like expanding into the unknown and the magic that comes into that. And I want to share a story to kind of kick it off because it was such a brilliant story that someone shared with me about this whole concept of when we're really in alignment with what it is that we want, and it's really connected to an inner knowing, right? It's not coming from a place of scarcity or lack or like filling a void kind of thing, but really having a knowing of what is meant for me and really, really believing in that and putting ourselves in alignment with the energy of that thing. Just what happens, like that is what's meant for you will be there for you, and it might defy all odds and logic and reason. So I'm going to give you a story about this, but I want to go into this whole shifting of this whole period is shifting of paradigms, shifting of belief structures, shifting of perspective. And because the veil is so thin right now, we really have access to a very, very different state of being. But what that requires is letting go of the past, not replicating the future by the example of the past, but really stepping in to an unknown and creating what it is that we truly want from a heart place, not from a rational, logical, solely left part of our brain that can kind of feed into fear and worry, but really coming from present moment living, connecting to your heart and taking on a creativity as to how we quote unquote manifest, which is really just live it, be it, embody it, trust it, have faith in it. Whew, it's a juicy subject. So that's what we're going to dive into today. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So the mind is a tool, right? And it can really either work for us or against us. And you might be so bored about hearing about, beliefs and how our beliefs paint our reality, and just change your beliefs and, your reality changes. But it's actually really just very true, right? And I know a lot of people say, well, easier said than done. And there's truth to that as well, because the thing is, we have to recognize that as human beings, we're very habitual. And what we are habitually telling ourselves and believing, whatever we're believing in, which sometimes is not even our own beliefs, right? It's ancestral. It gets handed down to us from our parents, from our educators, from our peers even. We're very easily influenced. And this work of building self-awareness and awareness in general is really being discerning of what's my belief and what's not, and what is that working for me, right? Do I want to have that belief? So on a vaster, more etheric level, you could say, well, all of this is a reflection or a projection or a simulation, whatever you want to call it, of our thoughts, right? But I want to keep it honed into the practical today. Our minds, like I said, are a tool, and they can work for us or against us. But we tend to be more indoctrinated and leaning towards limitation. When we think and we use these words like abundance and manifestation, the thing is abundance is really just like, if you look at it as the image or the analogy of a fountain that isn't ever going to run out of water, right? It keeps on recycling it. It pours forth and it comes back in, and then it comes up and out and pours forth again. And there's a flow, there's a constant flow. And this is really the abundance, is like that there's a constant motion and recycling and regenerating and what would the word be? That it never runs out. That's the thing about abundance. It just never runs out. The source is forever producing, right? Creating, birthing. So we've been taught to look at things very logically and rationally. So I want to share a story that was shared with me the other day. So this woman was looking for a house, and she knew that it would kind of just come to her. She didn't want to look at it through kind of the normal ways, right, of going online. She felt like it would come through a connection and all of these things. She didn't want to find it on a site, right? Ironically, she did find it on a site. However, it was sent to her by a friend. When she contacted the agency, there were 70 people ahead of her to see this house. So you could immediately go, this is impossible. I'm never going to get that house. 70 people that are signed up to see it before me, right? But when she had seen the images, she just felt, this is my house. She just had the knowing, this is my house. It's in the exact location that I want to be in, that I feel called to be in. And so she was already really aligning her, you could call it frequency, energy, vision, knowing, all of it was like, this is my house, right? And this is what it takes, is it takes a kind of inner knowing that is so confident to say, this is mine, not from a kind of ownership, like this is mine and not yours, but it's really coming from that place of inner knowing, inner wisdom. So she was taking a walk in the area one day, and she comes across on her path a key. She finds a key and she picks it up and she says, this is a sign. I'm going to find my house today. So she calls the agency because she wants to set up a viewing for it. And a young woman picks up that is new. So she doesn't know that there are 70 people ahead of her. And she says, oh yeah, I think there's a viewing. You can, there's one today. You can go over there. And she goes, great. Thank you. Can you send me the address? And she says, yeah, sure. Here's the address. There's going to be 3 other people that are going to be there. So she arrives at the address, she arrives at the house, and there's nobody else there. She's the only person. One person didn't get the message, one didn't show up, and the other got lost. So she's there and she meets the owner and she has a whole conversation and, they negotiate and boom, it's her place. And I love this story so much because the logical, rational, limited mind would have from the get-go given up and said, there's no way. 70 people are ahead of me. Like, there's just no way it's going to happen. Like, I give up, right? But when something is meant for you, the universe conspires to give it to you, right? She called in the right moment. Like, firstly, she looked at the sign. She listened. She found the key and she took that as, I'm going to find my house today. And so this is another thing, is we have to listen. There are signs around us all the time, but we're just not paying attention. So that's our job. Our job is to be present enough and aware enough to see these things, that there's miracles and signs and communication through all sorts of things. We just have to pay attention. And this is why distraction pulls us away from our innate power, our innate abilities, right? Everything in society is to distract and numb and dumb down our inherent miraculous abilities, right? So you got to pay attention to that. But it's really this, getting out of the mind frame of what is limited, of what is impossible. So reading the signs and then really aligning with the inner knowing. I have known when it's a house or when I was acting and I'd go into an audition, I knew the auditions that I was going to get the job. I just knew it. I felt it. I also felt when it was like, no, that wasn't quite in alignment. But even with a person, like, past relationships, I have one particular boyfriend when I was younger where I actually saw him briefly 6 months before. And I just had this intuition that's like, you're going to have a story with that person. Didn't think of anything then, but 6 months later, something happened and I was in a relationship with this person. So it's all about kind of like paying attention and listening to. And then recognizing that when something is meant for you, it goes beyond any kind of space, time, logic, sense. It's just, if it's meant for you, it will happen. It will conspire to support you. So all of a sudden, the 70 people disappear, right? She gets to go right to the head of the line. And even the 3 people that could be seen as competition, they don't show up, right? So we need to begin to recognize that life is not black or white. It's not rigid. It doesn't have to be fixed to the concept of our thoughts and opinions around something. that actually it can become so magical and miraculous. It appears like a miracle when actually it's like, well, yeah, but that's just kind of how it works when we step out of the, the construct or the quote unquote matrix that we've applied certain rules to. When you throw those rules out and you go, actually, those aren't the, finite rules, right? That actually creation, universe, manifestation, whatever you want to call it, is infinite. And the only thing that will block it or keep it limited or restricted are our beliefs and our mind. I've certainly had the experience in this last year of things really turned around for me when I really kind of took an inventory on my belief system. I was really recognizing that, especially when it came to money, and money really was the catalyst for freedom and getting myself out. It wasn't just money, but that was a part of it, of getting out of the situation that I was in, that I was very unhappy, in for several years. And I had to really pay attention. What's the language that I'm using? And is that helping me? Is it making me feel good? Is it bringing me into a place of joy and expansion and abundance? And it was like, no, I don't like using this terminology anymore. Like, this is expensive, or I can't afford that, or it won't be possible because I don't have the money. And, I think I shared this story, but like the moment that I really pulled myself up and I was like, is that working for me? And I just said, you know what? No, I'm gonna drop that. Like, I don't want to use that language anymore. I don't want to have that perspective anymore. And in that instance, literally 2 days later, everything changed. Everything changed. I had this was gifted, a certain amount of money that helped me to get out. So you go, oh my God, that's a miracle. And I remember saying to myself, it's going to take a miracle. And then the universe is like, yeah, there you go. Here's a miracle. But my responsibility was to take ownership for the things that were limiting me, that were limiting that possibility, that were creating rules and restrictions and limitations that weren't allowing me to expand into the place that I wanted to be in. And I've had to do that several times. I had to do it again recently when it came to housing. I was like, I'm not having any luck finding a house, and it's really hard and it's too expensive. I was kind of going back into that again. And I thought, wait a second, Corinne, hold up. Reality check. You've actually always been very fortunate and very lucky that you've manifested beautiful homes your entire life, like from when I was 17. And I just confidently and nonchalantly manifested exactly where I wanted to be. Exactly. And didn't even think twice about it, right? We're not so jaded when we're younger. And I reminded myself of that. And I was like, wait a second. Okay, let's let go of this bullshit story. Like, that's so limiting. Let go of that. It's not making me feel good. It's not making my day-to-day existence feel very enjoyable, right? It's coming out of fear. It's coming out of scarcity. It's coming out of impossibility. And again, within days of dropping that belief and holding myself accountable for believing in it, everything shifted. And then I found this place that I'm in for the summer that actually, when I look back, reflects so similarly to what I had been manifesting, again, very nonchalantly several months ago. So one part of this is really holding up, like really looking in the mirror of what beliefs am I carrying that are just not serving me, that don't even need to be true. I don't care how much society barks it down your throat. I tend to kind of tune a lot of stuff out because I find that it's very limiting, you got to kind of play your own game. Actually, this woman that was telling me the story was saying, there's loads of even her friends that say, oh, that's going to be impossible. You're never going to get it. This is totally unrealistic. And she just had to tune them out. Like, be like, I'm focused. I'm determined to be in the frequency and in the belief that this is my home. And if it's meant to be, it will be. And so you have to shut out the doubt. I remember when I was pregnant, I didn't listen to anyone. I was like, I didn't go to classes. I didn't do any of that. I just worked with people privately and myself because I didn't want to hear like that horror story or that belief system. I even had my downstairs neighbor after the fact that was like, oh no, I don't believe that women can give birth naturally. That's not natural. And I just was like, I'm sorry, but no, that's not true. And so I was really like an Olympic athlete that had to focus on my game and stay in my lane and just put out the voices of doubt, of limitation of, I don't like to use the word negativity, but you know what I'm getting at, right? You get the point. Sometimes we have to be really disciplined with that, whether it's voices outside of us or the voices even inside our own head. Now, when it comes up, it's not about berating them. It's not about judging them. It's not about resisting and fighting and being in conflict with, but it's recognizing, oh, this is a habit. I have been in the habit of perceiving life in this way, through this lens, through the lens of limitation and impossibility. That is a habit. And so just like kicking sugar, it takes a little while, right? And it begins to like lose its grip on you, right? The more you just acknowledge it, you're not resisting it, you're not trying to get rid of it. But the way to alchemize it is first you have to allow it to be there. You have to accept it. You have to acknowledge that it exists. You have to acknowledge why it's existed. I learned this. I learned this from my parents, or I learned this from society, or I learned this from my peers. And the thing is, you get a good example of this of like, you kind of go, well, I'm just going to use the example of money because it's kind of an obvious one, but I could relate it to love, relationship, talents, anything, right? But what is it that like, you could say, why do rich people produce rich people, right? You could say, oh, well, because they're entitled and they have money and all this stuff. No, it's because it's a belief system, right? I come from abundance. I believe I'm abundant. I believe like that's the context. That's the blueprint. That's the template of my life. I'm not believing otherwise, right? I'm not going to go into like morals and ethics and how we show up. And that's a different story, right? But just looking at it objectively, the same could be if I have a really good example of love, I will believe that love is possible. If I don't have a good example of love, I will believe that love is impossible, or it's not possible, or it's broken, or it's this and that and the other. I mean, we learn our belief systems. And then as an adult, we have to go, wait a second, do I want to take on this belief consciously? We make the unconscious conscious and we recognize, is this serving me? Is this working for me? And I think as we're shifting paradigms, we're shifting ways of being, we could say we're shifting dimensions and frequencies, whatever you want to call it, if you want to use that terminology. What we're learning to do really at the core of it is come into heart. Come into heart. Use the mind as a tool, but as that, it's a tool, it's a servant, right? But don't be at the mercy of it. And I think now more than ever, we get to choose love over fear. Don't condemn fear. Don't get rid of it. Don't shame it. Don't blame it. Don't even transcend it. Include it. Love it. Embrace it. Allow it to rise up with you. Bring it into the arms of love. Bring it into the state of joy. Things don't change by getting rid of. They change by including and transmuting, right? So we have, as I've been talking a lot about this last year, we are at this choice point. Do you choose love or do you choose fear? Do you choose joy or do you choose worry? Do you choose expansion and abundance or do you choose limitation and restriction? It is a choice because the thing is, it's a state of being. And once your state of being changes because you're all of a sudden embodying and perceiving life differently, then your reality reflects that. That's really what manifestation is. We're not attracting something, we're becoming something so that we see it and we notice it. It's more about what am I seeing? What am I focusing on rather than what I'm attracting, right? I'm not going to notice something if I don't believe it. That's why I say I will see it when I believe it, not I'll believe it when I see it. I will only see it when I believe that it's true, that it's possible, that I'm deserving of it, that I'm worthy of receiving that, right? So we're at this choice point and we are becoming the thing. We are becoming and creating, therefore emanating what it is that we want to experience in life. And because the veil is thin and because we're coming out of this density and we're coming out of fear that pulls us into a very third dimensional density, there's like instant synchronicity and serendipity and manifestation. Even if it's like a thought that I've had the night before, it comes up in a conversation the next day. And again, I can't help but think, wow, this is so cool. Like life is so magical, But it is our responsibility to kind of sift through the shit that just isn't, it's not serving us. And I know a lot of people can, those belief systems can be so strong that's like, yeah, but that doesn't work for me. And if I look at the past, this is that's what's been proven to me. That's my experience. That's not, that's yours. That's not mine. Or I'm going to compare. Those people can have it, but I can have it. That is still a belief system. That's still a belief system. And you're excluding yourself from what is your birthright. Your birthright, your birthright is freedom. Your birthright is abundance. And I don't mean just financial abundance. What I mean is abundance of that fountain that is forever giving and receiving and giving and receiving. That is your birthright. Your birthright is to be in a state of joy. Your birthright is to be in a state of love. The rest is conditioning. Or the rest is, you could say also, coming back to this whole life isn't happening to you, but for you. I read something this morning that was around see everything as a miracle, even the pain, even the struggle, because all of it is a catalyst. If you approach what happens in your life with consciousness and you go, okay, why is this coming up? What do I have to learn? What do I have to grow? How can I expand through this rather than being contracted by it? We are learning to come back into an empowered place rather than being victimized by life. Right? All of these old paradigms, we're deconstructing, they're crumbling. We don't need them anymore. Let it go. And we can be addicted to suffering. We can be addicted to limitation. It sounds funny, but we can be addicted to it because we know it and what we know feels safe, even if it doesn't serve us. So it really is up to us as individuals to go, what do I want to believe in? And in the beginning, it's going to feel like you're believing like black space. Because you're not going to have the proof yet. Maybe your mind is going to go, oh, but look at the proof of your past. Yeah, but do I want my past to be my future? Your past will become your future if you keep on replicating and placing the same template in again and again and again and again. Change the template and the game changes. The reality changes, right? And this is where it just takes discipline. It takes dedication. It takes practice. You are breaking a habit. So be mindful of your terminology and your vocabulary. I tend to sometimes with clients, I'll use certain words. I'm like, let's shift that word so that it's something that you're not in conflict with, that you can look at with just a greater sense of gentleness, right? Because when we judge something and we give it a label that kind of feels more abrupt or abrasive or conflicting or judgmental, it's harder to alchemize that. It's harder to transmute it because there's a judgment in it, right? Rather than, okay, this is a habit. This is what I've learned. I'm unlearning it so I can learn something new. You take it a little bit more lightly and you work with it. You be curious about it, but you don't go into the judgment of, I don't like this. This is a terrible thought. This is a negative thought. It served you for a certain period of time, but it's not serving you now. So you get to choose to let it go. And we can be very addicted to our past because our past gave us an identity. But if you're in a point in your life where you want to change your life, you want to bring certain things into your life that are not yet here, it's not just focusing on bringing those things in. It's focusing on who do I have to become to be in that, whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a house, whether it's a geographical place. How do you need to align? It's like the story that my friend told, like she had to bring herself into the frequency that would match that house. She had to come into the knowing that's like a relationship. Her and the house were in a relationship. Are they compatible? And the example that I'll give to this is, you can look this up on YouTube, that this is about frequency. So if you have two pitchforks, you have one on the left and one on the right, and one of them, whatever, let's call the one on the right, is next to a stand with like a little ball hanging from it. And so if you hit one pitchfork that is a different frequency from the pitchfork that is near the ball, it won't do anything. But if you hit the left pitchfork that is of the same frequency of the right pitchfork, because the vibration and the frequency matches, it creates a current, right? It creates vibration is energy that moves, right? So what happens is the energy goes in a line, it shoots around, and I mean, you can't see this, but this is what's happening. And the ball that's hanging on the stand next to it starts to swing, right? So it just shows you that it's not about like, oh, this frequency is better, so that's what moved the ball. No, the frequency was in harmony with the two pitchforks were in harmony, in sync with each other, and that's what created the movement. So whatever it is that you're wanting to manifest, let's use that term. Whatever it is that you're wanting to manifest into your life, you have to become that. You have to become the same energy, the same frequency, the same note, right? Think of it as a song. You have to be in the same key. Otherwise, it's going to sound off key, off balance. It's not going to be in harmony. It's not going to sound right. It's not going to sound good. So that's why, especially, a lot of the people that come to me are single and they're wanting to manifest a relationship. You can have the list, you can have all the things that you want. That's great. It's clarifying. Know what your non-negotiables are, like know what your triggers are. Go do all of the inner work. But then actually you got to show up as the person that is going to fit into that relationship, that is going to be a part of creating that relationship. Now, the other thing that I want to say about manifestation, and I see this particularly when it comes to relationship, is you think that it's all on your shoulders. Whereas everything is an orchestration between two or several points. It's not just you. I mean, okay, you could kind of say, well, this is all my simulation, and so I'm creating this. But it's a collective experience, and so especially let's use the example of relationship. It's not just you that's creating and manifesting this. It's also the other person that's creating and manifesting you. And you have to align with each other. So know that it doesn't have to be a lonely process, right? It doesn't have to feel like it's all on your shoulders and your responsibility. You're responsible for your part, absolutely. But know that you're always in partnership with the counterbalance, with the other part, right? Whether it's the person, the job, the house, the place, there's always something that you're relating to and in partnership with, and it's about bringing the magnetism is bringing those things together, right? The boat will always look for the lighthouse. One attracts the other, right? The lighthouse will always draw in the boat, right? So it doesn't have to feel lonely, right? It doesn't have to feel like hard work. Is there some discipline required? Yes. Is there self-awareness that's required? Yes. This is a conscious action. And I think we're coming out of this life is happening to me and life is happening for me by engaging in our life, by not playing the victim, by not being the spiritual child, as I spoke about last week. Like it's really growing into our own maturity as spiritual beings in this human experience and coming into harmony with all parts of it. But now is the time. Now is really the time to be very honest about your belief systems, your limitations. Don't judge yourself. Don't berate yourself for them, but shift them. If they're not working for you, shift them. And if you need some external guidance, then work with someone that can help you with that. We're all learning. We're unlearning and learning. We're all doing it right now. But it's a beautiful moment in time to be able to really make very strong decisions that are going to potentially completely turn around our lives. It's absolutely possible. And if you're still in the belief of like, no, it's not possible, that's okay. Then be in that process. Everyone has their own timing. And it's not about coming into this place. Again, I like what Matthias was saying, that we have this idea that we need to eradicate the shadow. Light and shadow is a part of existence. It's a part of the universe. The universe doesn't look at it. Creator doesn't look at it as like one is good and one is bad. One is, good and one is evil, right? It just is. And so he was saying that, it's not about getting rid of or eradicating or even transcending the shadow. It's about like, if you want to talk about frequency, as you're raising your frequency, you're raising the frequency of the shadow, but you can only go up if you go down. And it's what the podcast host was saying, like the branches can only grow as far out as the roots go deep down, right? Otherwise it topples over and it dies. That's it. So we have to acknowledge that this isn't about like getting rid of the darkness. This isn't about getting rid of or avoiding our shadow. We have to go into the darkest, deepest depths to create a very strong foundation, to grow roots so that we can expand. This is the yin and yang. Out of darkness comes light. We've got to stop vilifying things. Because when we come into a place of acceptance, that's when we come into a place of expansion. When we come out of the duality, possibility is infinite. When we come out of judgment, it's infinite. But we can't ignore and neglect it. We have to include, embrace, love, transmute, alchemize it, right? So the invitation is just to, again, this is a point of reflection. Look at, well, what are my belief systems? How am I limiting myself? How does logic feel safe to me? What would it look like if I, tried something new and different and get out of the habit? How can I do it in a way that's loving so that I'm not in conflict and in war against myself, against this part of myself that has just been habituated to believe, oh, this is safety and security and this is how you do life. And actually, how do I include that and hold it by the hand and look at life very, very differently? A lot of people are catching on to the fact that we are creating a very new future, but we have zero example for it. We are creating it as we go. So can you trust the unknown? And I love what someone said. I don't remember who it was now that was saying, hope can sometimes be disguised as despair. It can still come from like, oh God, I hope this can come true. I hope this can happen, but it's still despairing underneath it. Whereas knowing, trust your inner knowing. And also knowing is, I trust that it's for my highest and greatest good. And if something is not for my highest and greatest good, then that's not the thing. Something else will come in. If that house wasn't for your highest and greatest good, if that man or woman wasn't for your highest and greatest good, if that job wasn't for your highest and greatest good, trust it and realign. Keep on embodying what it is that you want to feel and experience from a place of knowing and trust and faith and joy and heart and love, and know that that match will come in its own divine timing. This is epic faith and belief in yourself. And that you are creator, you are source, you are God, you are universe, you are love, you are consciousness. And you're in a dance with all of that is around you and being reflected back to you. And don't get stuck in the story of, oh, I'm getting reflected back, all of this like negative shit and bad things happen to me and blah, 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 blah. Okay, what is there to learn about that? How is that a gift? How is that a part of your growth? I have learned so much from the shadow. I bow down to it with reverence and respect. I've learned so much through my suffering and my pain and my challenge. Do I want to stay stuck in that? Do I want to keep on repeating that story? Do I want to replicate that and take that as a template for my future? No. But if and when it comes up in my life, I will bow down to it. I will sit and stay with it because I know it is a teacher. And that any emotion that comes up, I see it as a messenger. Life is happening for you. All of it. Stop judging it as good or bad or right or wrong. All of it is happening for you. But you get to choose. It's your responsibility of how are you going to perceive it. You're going to perceive it as praise and punishment, or you're going to perceive it as, what is this showing me? What is this communicating to me? Right? It's for you. So all of it is okay. All of it. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it is okay. It's all for you. What you choose to do with it is your free will. But if you choose to take it as something that is medicine for you, it's a gift for you, then it will turn into beautiful things. And that is your birthright. All right. I'm going to leave it at that. And as always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.